You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Nancy Hurley. How Nancy retired early and you can too. Ladies, welcome. This is a super exciting episode because we are going to talk about what it actually looks like to design your life when your calendar looks like a bunch of colors with no spaces. And my guest today is Nancy Hurley, who is a client of mine, and I'm super excited for you to hear her journey of life design. Nancy is a highly accomplished marketing executive. She's been doing this for over 25 years, probably longer, in strategic planning, doing implementation, product marketing, product management, messaging, branding. She worked for a big, giant corporation, was a freelance consultant, went back to work for the big, giant corporation, and came to me in a place that she's going to tell you about. Probably like at the beginning, about a year ago, if I think, right? Like about a year ago, Nancy, that we started
this part of
our journey. Yes, exactly. Started this part of our journey together. So why don't you just sort of set the stage? Because like you'd been doing personal development work, you have the t-shirt, you read the book. But where were you sort of like a year ago, and what was your situation that made you kind of want to take a look at your life? What happened?
Yeah, and absolutely. But I do want to give you a shout out because yes, this particular work started a year ago, but I came back to you after so much work that we had done together through, Living Courageously, and just the profound changes that I had through that program, I think really got me to where I am today, right? I wouldn't have been able to do any of that without like the transformation of believing in myself and valuing myself and everything that I got through the rest of the program.
Love that.
And I'll also say it kind of really made it an easy choice to work with you again when I knew I needed to go through a next transformation. So,
oh my gosh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I love that.
100% true. 100%. So where was I about a year ago? So just about a year ago, let me first describe like what work was like.
Yes.
How I think the best way to say it is all consuming. That it was just, my friends were like, you have to stop, it's just, we don't see you anymore. To your point, my calendar was just, a complete, I work for a company that the primary people I worked with were based on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So I would roll out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, start with my meetings, kind of get done till about 2 or 3, take a small break, and then go do the work for the day, right? And so I'm working like 6 to 10, and it was so much, and it was good and challenging work, but it was unsustainable, and I felt incredibly one-dimensional, right? I mean, and I wasn't dating at all because it's like, who has time for that? And like I said, my friends were like, hey, what are you doing? And almost exactly a year ago, I turned 60. And I said to myself, I don't want to be doing this at 61. I want to figure out how I can retire by 61. And I said that to myself, and then that scared the crap out of me, right?
Why did it scare? So tell me, like, what was that like? What were the fears?
The fears. I mean, I think the number one fear is absolutely financially. Can I do this financially? Can I make this happen? If I look back on a lot of the things that I've worked on in the past, financial insecurity was a big one. I grew up with parents that were raised during the Depression. They had me pretty late in their lives. And so this message of save, 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 and you never know when the sky is going to fall, and don't spend money on yourself, and like all that kind of stuff resonated in me. And I had done a lot of work to get over it, but you can't, it's still there, right? It's one of my little who's that I always had to talk to. So financially, can I make this work was one. Identity. Who am I if I am not working? You know, like, what am I going to do? And, you know, I had poured so much of myself into that job that I felt like I said, it was one dimensional, and it was who I was. I was a manager. I was a coach. I was a marketing person. I was all these things. But so what would that look like if I stopped doing that? Right. And then the other part of it is, okay, I do have all these visions of what I wanted to do, but I'm single. Right. And it's like, what's that look like, doing that by myself? Like the risk of doing this, and I don't want to do it alone, or, you know, so there, I think if I went to the top 3 scary things, that those were them. And somehow you were in Portugal just before I was in Portugal, and we just kind of were texting about being in Portugal.
Yes.
And then I'm like, that was in June of last year. And then in August, I'm like, hey, I need your help. Help me get over these hurdles, because a lot of them are just in my head.
So, okay. So first of all, I want to clarify, because you said this job was my identity, but correct me if I'm wrong, whether it was this job or the job before, because in the years that I knew you, you would like show up and then you'd like disappear off into work. Like, and because you were all consumed, right? Not because you didn't want to be. It was like you would have a pattern of getting sucked back into work. So this last job.
Absolutely. And I know part of that pattern. And again, things that I worked on, but then you can fall back into that rut all the time. Right?
Yeah.
Is, I think I look for validation through work, right? Validation, like my value is based on work. And again, we could go into a whole lot of like where that came from, but that's true. And so I just always wanted to take on the next challenge, or I can do this or whatever, without really regard for what the impact to me actually was. And I got to my own breaking point, and then I just was like, I know that I am going to need help and coaching if I really think I'm going to stick my stake in the ground and say I'm going to be done in a year.
Because you went to Portugal, and I think you were like, wow. And you have friends that had maybe retired or were living in Portugal. And so you came back and you were like, I could see like that I don't want to spend 61 and on like grinding in my life, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And I think, another thing that did contribute, and some other folks in my age range might be dealing with the same things, is I also watched my dad, and he worked till he was like 72, and he just turned 97. I was literally just in Boston for his 97th birthday, right? But like, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And then there's my dad kind of like, what am I doing now? And then as he's declined, he can't do things. He wants to travel. He can't do it. And I'm thinking like, hey, I might have great genes to live till 97, but man, I got a good 20 something years where I can go play, and I am not going to sit behind a desk and do it. I want to live my life like I'm like skidding in at the end, right? And it's like,
I got the chills. Okay, so let's talk about this, because I think a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, yes. And they go and they're like, okay, on next Monday or starting in October or whatever it is, I'm gonna have more boundary, and maybe they don't. So what were the things that you tried before to sort of like, make life more manageable so that you didn't have to, that you could sort of acknowledge your fears and be like, well, maybe if I just do this and this, it won't be so bad. Was there any of that for you?
Before I started talking to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, I would pretend that I was going to not work weekends, or, or I'm going to set these boundaries, or I'm going to stop doing this, or whatever. And I think, I don't know. I mean, in the back of my head, I always knew, and again, I live a life of abundance. I had enough, but I couldn't quite get myself to the point. Like, okay, things that I did. I got a retirement worksheet, right? And kind of go
Yeah.
through, here's all the things that I would want to do. But like, I don't know, I started doing it, and 2 months later or so, I'm like, oh, I should probably go back and fill that out. It's like I was half-assing taking the steps that it would take me to really do it. Right.
Yep.
And again, luckily, I feel that particularly in all the work that we've done, but even I am not object to asking for help when these kind of things these are big. This is momentous. And I know we can tell the story how we got here, but I can't tell you how many people, like, they're like, oh, you're retiring. I was thinking about it. What's it like? And I'm like, I hired a coach. To help me. And like that, people are like, realize that is kind of what it takes to get you from, this is what I've been doing way more than 25 years. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 40 freaking years. And how am I going to turn that off and live my life so differently? I need to wrap my head around it. Right. And worksheets are great. And you can go online and listen to things, and it's like, but you have to do the somatic work, right? That is, what does it mean? What will it look like? How do you get comfortable with that? And again, I know we can talk about the work that we did, but by the time it rolled around for me to retire, I was nothing but ready. It's like, are you afraid? No, bring it on. It's like,
right. Because we did all that. We did all that work. So let me ask you this. When you think about, the decision, to get help and, holding yourself accountable, right? Like having to confront those fears. Mm-hmm. What do you think it took? Like, if you were going to tell people who are listening, like, how do you actually go from like fantasizing about it or wanting it, or, that like maybe one day to actually dealing with it? What was that like for you?
Well, I think you do have to look at it as a process, right? And a process to identify what those fears are, and look at, as you always would say, like, what's your worst case scenario, right? But like, weigh out, like, what does this look like? What would it look like? And then go off and do very concrete things. Like, I had to go off and I had to work with my financial advisor. Estate planning, I went off and finally did that. I'm like, hey, I'm 60, right? It's like, finally doing the estate planning and all of that type of thing. But like, getting all of those ducks in line and being held accountable to do them is important. But again, those are like concrete, kind of measurable things, right? I think what really helped in our case is getting to the intangibles of what the fear is, right?
Right.
And like, okay, one of the things I think is really important, and I've also talked to, some other friends, it's like, this is not the end of my life,
Right.
It's like, it's not necessarily the end of my work life. I can go back to consulting. I can go make money. I can do something different. And so it had to be like, really examine, what does it mean to me to kind of walk away from this job right? And so how am I identifying with this job, or how am I identifying with work, and how do I identify myself as a professional that I feel like I that I would feel comfortable saying, "What do you do?" And I say I'm retired, as opposed to "What do you do?" and I say, "Oh, I'm in product marketing." And I know that sounds, but it's like my job is not my identity, right?
Right.
And getting through that. So there's like concrete things to get through on the financial side of it, right? And then there's the how do you feel confident in knowing that you're gonna be okay? You're gonna be okay, and that I'm so much more than my job.
Oh, I love this. Okay. So an important first step that we took,
Yeah.
because I always talk about like how you're not going to blow up your life, right? Like there's a process, right? And so one of the first things we did is we looked at that calendar that you had and in the detaching from your identity, some of the beginning things that you did were change the way you actually started showing up in your job. Like it was first things first, right? About making yourself a priority and starting to delegate. Do you want to share that journey as you started to like not be the most important person to everybody because you had to have it that way?
Yeah, that was tough, right? It's like, hey, none of us get to where we are if we're not just a little bit type A. And my way is the way to do it, right? And to your point, it's like, I think what's interesting to me, I feel like, and again, through a lot of the coaching, is that what I wanted to do was make sure that my team was going to be just fine. Right. It's like I kind of always approached, being a manager or director or whatever as kind of a bit like a mama bear. I like protected the people. And in order to do that, I had to give them the responsibility. I had to, like you say, kind of let go, right? And just be like, no, you got this. No, you got this, and if somebody, even if it came to like a document and it wasn't right, it's like a lot of times I would do it because it was a deadline and we had to get it done. It's like, no, I have to let them fail, right? And I had to let go of my own perfectionism, but I wanted to do it in a way that I really felt like I was taking care of other people and making sure that they'd be just fine without me, And they tell me they miss me, but I'm sure they're just fine without me. And, there's a realization too. It's like, look, nobody's irreplaceable. No, right? And so when it came time for me to hand things over to the person that took over my team, she was super gracious. She's like, "Oh my God, how do you do this?" or whatever, right? But I'm like, no, I'll be here, and so we turned it over kind of early so that she could kind of really get up to speed and all of that type of thing. But one thing that I really wanted to be sure of was to get out of the way.
Right.
Right. And that takes a lot. And sometimes your baby.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, I'm just giving this to somebody else. And it's like, let me know if you need help instead of you should do it this way. That's big. But it's like, I wanted other people to be successful, and I can't, but letting go is hard. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But, as soon as I was like, hey, they can do this, I can kind of relax. Hey, I don't have to do everything all the time, and I'm sure some people really appreciated that. I don't want to say I was a micromanager, but I got very involved with things, and it's like, I got to let them do their own thing. And
I think that showed you also that, you started to have some small wins around like, not having to work on the weekends or closing your laptop at 5:00, right? And so you had some baby steps to start. You're like, oh, I'm working out, I'm seeing my friends. And you kind of slowly started decoupling yourself from that like work is all I have and all I do.
It's funny. I can't remember all the specifics, but I would remember I would call you and go like, I had this conversation. Like, oh, I did this. And you're like, yay. And I don't remember all of them, but yeah, that absolutely a lot of wins along the way. As I said, it was a process. If I had said, like I said, a year ago, when I said I wanted to do this, and let's just say I got laid off or something, right? I would have been in a pure panic, right? Because I just wouldn't have had my head around it. To now, to just be like, yeah, I got this. I don't know how to keep saying it. It's like you said, there's small wins along the way and a lot of concrete things you could do and a lot of mental things and emotional things. But I think one of the other things that you really made sure I focused on early on is do not let it keep going, pushing out and pushing out and pushing out.
Right.
It's like you're saying you're going to do this. You have to put this stake in the ground. And this is the goal you're going to. Because if you just kind of keep saying, oh, well, maybe it'll be the next thing, or, oh, maybe I'll wait until these long-term incentives mature, or, oh, maybe I'll do this, then it's never going to happen. And it's only a rut of a different kind, right? It's a slightly different rut to do it.
Absolutely.
And so
what would you say then to those people that are listening and they're like, because what you just said, well, yeah, but, right? Like, I was just talking to someone actually who's like in a high pressure job. And now that COVID is more of the past, like there's travels come back like full on. And this person is like in her late 50s being like, I only have to do this for 2 more years. But then she's like, but is that how I want to spend my precious life? So what do you say to the ladies that are listening that are like, yeah, but...
Gosh, you can but yourself to death, right? It's like, can I just say here, yeah, I could have done that, but you know what? I'm going to yoga every day. I'm sleeping, right? I'm sleeping as late as I want. People have seen me and they're like, wow, you look like so relaxed. You look so whatever. And it's kind of like, yes, I could have kept working. Yes, I could have waited for those next set of long-term incentives so I would have more money to retire. But it's like, okay, so I'm going to work another year in order to have more money to spend. What if I'm not here in enough time? It's like life is short. And unless this is the most fulfilling thing that you're doing that like fills your soul, then there shouldn't be any buts. Like take care of you and what matters to you. I'm renting a house in Portugal for a month of October to go see if I really want to live there. I'm like doing the things that were in my head that I thought I wanted to do, and I can do them now. And it's like, and that extra money, if you truly can do it, if you can truly look at it from a financial perspective, and I'm not saying everybody has that kind of wherewithal, but if you can truly do it, all I would say is it's so much more gratifying to serve yourself than to serve a job.
Wow, that's so deep. So let me ask you about your now, because one of the things that we did when we talked about like what's the worst thing that can happen was we sort of came up with a plan of like you could pivot your expertise into consulting, right? And so you sort of the way we did this was so intentional, and you didn't have to like, when we first started, you were like, I got to get out of here, like pronto, right? So we're like, whoa, let's take this one step at a time, right? So we changed some things at the current job, got some space, got some freedom, started having some room and space to do some work. So share with everyone, like, how did you set up that ending to where you were able to sort of leave some good things around possible consulting? You were able to send some things around like getting like the right compensation at the end. Like, how do you think that the way that you did this life design process allowed you to leave in such like a woohoo, like I did this way
Well,
so fully
yeah, one thing I
embodied?
think that I did that I think mattered a lot was I was very intentional in telling people really early on, right?
Yep.
It's like, I know I had to kind of made my decision in August, but like in January of, I guess it's still this past year, I told my manager, I'm like, hey,
Right.
I'm retiring. And, she's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to. We can figure out the exact timing and everything, but let me help you figure out how we do this, right? And what makes sense. And I'll take you through this event because it's like our Super Bowl, right? It was in May. And then
Yeah.
after that, let's figure out transition. And I think that being very upfront and very deliberate and saying, how can I help you in this process? Because I'd never want to leave anybody high and dry.
Right.
Really, I believe they really appreciated that, right? Because I didn't say I'm leaving next month. I didn't say whatever. I mean, we literally had 8 months to
Yep.
to do this, and it was a pretty big job and a lot of responsibility, and so
Yep.
like transitioning that was pretty big, and so I think that mattered. I also let my team know so that they weren't going to, all of a sudden be like, wait, what's happening, right? So I didn't let them know at that time, but around the May timeframe, I was like, hey guys, this is what's happening for me, and what do you want to do? Want to make sure you land where you want to land, kind of thing, and so that really helped. And in some of those conversations, both with my manager and with her manager who's an SVP, they were like, are you going to go back to consulting? Because they know I came in as, I was doing work for them and got hired full time. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to go back. And they're like, okay, well, let us know when you're ready. Right. And the senior VP is like, hey, when you need to get your company back on the approved vendor list, just email me. I'll make that happen. Right. So do I know what it would look like? No. But do I know that the way I approached it, that there's no bridges burned whatsoever, right? Now, do I want to get back into a full-time kind of consultant thing? Absolutely not. But I'll
No.
project work and the like. And the other thing too, interestingly enough, I was an analyst in the industry at one point in time, and I worked with a lot of analysts in this current role. And there's a lot of freelance work from analysts that come in, and to a point where one of them wanted me to start a podcast. They're like, we want you to do a podcast, and we want you to do this, and we want you to do that. And like, this is in July. I wasn't even gone from the company. And I'm
Right.
like, you know what? Let me call you when I get back from where am I going? Portugal. I'm like, I'll get in touch with you either in November or next year. I'm like, so it's there and the setup's there, but I'm in no hurry to do that, right? But I do think the approach of really being straightforward about it, and never, as much as I might have like handed off stuff to people, I never just like was like, not my problem, right? If you needed help, I was going to
Right.
give you help. And so I think that was cool. If I want to go back and do some consulting, I'm pretty sure I have opportunities.
Absolutely. And that helps create that safety net, right? So in that design process, you're like, okay, here's my financials. Here's what I love to do. We did your soul mapping, that what, how, and why. And we're like, okay, if I do anything else, it has to look like this.
Yep.
Right, on my terms. And you gave them notice. You got like an amazing out. And I think the way you set it up with the timing was even amazing, where like, I think you took your vacation and you came back and retired.
Pretty much. Yep. It was 3 weeks in France and Spain, came back, and I'm like, guys got anything for me to do? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right, cool. So yeah. So I signed up for yoga, bought some new golf clubs. It's like I'm excited.
So tell everyone now. So like, what does your life look like now? What are you excited about? What experiments are you now running? You know, I always talk about like this whole life design is like a series of experiments so that you never blow anything up. And when we first started, you're like, I'm moving to Portugal, you know? And then we were like, wait, now that you have so many options,
Yeah.
like you get to really choose it. So what experiments are you still running, and what are you doing now?
What's interesting is I had to also be very deliberate for like the first month, which has just been this past month, of not feeling like I had to be doing something.
Yes,
Right? Because
yes.
that's such a habit. It's like I wake up and I check my email and I had to do this and then I got to run errands and and it's like, no, let yourself do nothing. It's okay. You know, and if for me doing nothing might be hiking while I'm listening to a book or reading or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's like it was hard not to try and make myself be busy, right?
Love that.
So
Yep.
I'm kind of good with that, and now I'm kind of like, okay, but you know, I do want to. I could volunteer and do some things, you know, like I want to start doing it. But the experiments, like I said, yes, I may want to move to Portugal. But I don't know that yet. So again, I'm renting a house for the month of October in the Algarve region. Yes, I have some friends that live nearby, and my sister's coming to visit, but I was like, people were like, can I come? Can I come? And I'm like, no, I actually want to be there alone to know what it would be like to live in a foreign country on my own. And if this is the kind of the place that I want to be, right? Um, but just slow it down. It's like during that period of
Right.
time, I will, you know, explore and see and who knows, maybe go back again in January, whatever. Travel is really my biggest thing right now. So it's, you know, I get back from there. And then in December, I'm going to Fiji and New Zealand. And then, you know, I'm looking at maybe going to Chile and South America in like the February timeframe. And like just sort of, I don't have to make any big changes right now. I don't have to do anything.
Right.
And I think that's the most important part is kind of go like, okay, what will work for me? What really will work? Is living in another country really what I want to do? I think it is, but you know, let me feel out what that might look like. Is it like, no, I just keep what I have here as my home base and then I just travel everywhere? I don't know. Let me see what it looks like. And again, financially, I can do that right now. At some point in time, would it make sense to sell this house, downsize, and everything else? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I have good rates, maybe not, right?
Right.
But I think that's the point. You just play a little around with what does it look like, you know? And in the meantime, how do I keep my, you know, keep that multidimensional part going, right? Like what classes can I
Yeah, I love
take?
that.
You know, it's like where can I volunteer that you know isn't necessarily a big commitment kind of thing, right? And I mean that by like, okay, I can go to the food bank, you know, here and
Right.
here, but it's not the same as getting on a board of directors of a nonprofit again, like I was before, right? So, um, it's almost for me, I don't want to have any real structure at this point in time because it's much more about trying to figure out what really fits.
Yeah, I love, so there's spaciousness, and there's now that you are really centered in like the core of who you are, now you're just, what I hear you saying is like you're kind of exploring how can you express yourself
Yeah.
and what is going to be your ideal situation. And in order to do that, you have to let it be, right? You have to know what's working and what's not working. It's like the whole next level,
Yeah.
right? Of designing this new life with this new identity. I'm so happy for you.
Can I say one more thing? Because you know
Please.
one of the other things that I said in the beginning of a fear was
Yeah.
single and doing this on my own, and
Yeah.
and I've somewhat continuing to date, but like you and I talked about it, it's like I am in a space that I'm not I need to kind of figure out what I want to do, but maybe it is when I go over to Portugal and meet a fellow traveler or a fellow expat or somebody that's in kind of more the realm of where I'm at, because there's some wonderful men here, but they've like, their families, or they're going to retire on the beach, or they're going to, and it's like, that's great. And I'm happy, but that's not me. And I will find the person for me when I am living my authentic life.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because one of the things that we did was we went back in your profile, your online dating, and you were like, I don't actually want to meet somebody who wants to live here forever. Yeah, right. So at an unconscious level, I've been like pushing that away. And so now anyone that you do go out on a date with knows that you have an intention to do that. And so you're really much more, you have more freedom in that you don't have to try and change for someone else. You're really just doing you and seeing who fits into your ideal life situation.
Exactly.
So if you were going to give a piece of advice to anyone listening about, if you knew when you started, when you had that full calendar and all those fears, knowing what you know now, what you've been through, what would you say to them if they're in that fear? Or lost.
Yeah, and I'm honestly, I will make a disclaimer that you're not asking me to pitch you or anything, but I do think getting coaching. I mean, anyone I've told, it's like, this is a massive life change, and don't think you need to figure out how to do it on your own. Even if it's like, okay, you got another friend that's gone through it and you want to talk to them about it or whatever, but reach out and really, talk to people about what does it look like and what does it mean? And again, treat it as a process. Don't think you can do this overnight, because I think that's what scares people so much, right? And that's what scared me. And if you can really take a look at it over this period of time, set your goal, don't move it, but set your goal. But over time, you get more and more and more comfortable with the idea of it, then it's easy. That's kind of the biggest thing. It was easy for me at the end. Was it weird? Did I start having dreams about, like, I went to the office and people were like, why are you here? And I'm like, oh, this is weird. But you know what? It's so much easier. And then you get to spend time with your animals.
I love that. I know. That's so amazing. So cute. I know you're like, how can I do my life but also love on my cat? I'm like, we got a solution for everything.
Exactly.
We'll figure that out. Nancy, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was so much fun working with you. And I love that you said people are like, what did you do? You're so relaxed. You're, and I talked to someone else who said my blood pressure went down, like they went to a physical or something right before and then went after, and their blood pressure just changed dramatically because they weren't like, in cortisol overload 24/7.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mine's down. I think, starting to drop some weight, and it's like, I just feel better. I just feel so much better.
Yay!
I
love it.
I told somebody the other day, I'm like, I got a 95 sleep score. It's unheard of. That was unheard of when I was working. It's exciting. The little things that excite you.
Yeah, no, that's what you want, right? Yeah. You want to be able to live a healthy, full life of meaning. So I'm super excited for you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Ladies, obviously, I'm super happy to help you figure all of this out. So you can always reach out to me on Instagram, Marni Battista _. You can also, starting in October, I'll have a new website out. So make sure you guys look for that, marnibattista.com. That's going to be coming in October. But in the meantime, Nancy gave some really important tips and some little hacks in there about how you can start making some changes now. So as I always say at the end of every episode, this is about you taking responsibility for you. So always remember to life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for tuning into today's show. Do you ever wake up feeling like you've already run a marathon before the day even begins? Does your coffee need a coffee just to get through the morning? Well, I feel you, and I've been there. Burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a reality for far too many of us, especially as we navigate life over 40. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept feeling perpetually drained as your new normal. I'm excited to introduce my new flagship Live Life on Your Terms program. This isn't just another Band-Aid fix or a fluffy self-care promise. This is about real transformation. We're diving deep to tackle the root cause of your burnout, regulate your nervous system, lower your cortisol and adrenaline, and rewire your neural pathways to transform how you feel in your life from the inside out. Imagine this, waking up energized, not by caffeine, but by excitement and passion for the day ahead. Picture yourself managing stress with grace and finding joy in moments big and small. That's not just a dream or a someday. It's within your reach now. So, if you like what you've heard and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working together, here's what I want you to do next. Email me at vip@datingwithdignity.com. Don't wait for one day. Make today your day one so we can create your next chapter. I'm Marni, and I'll talk to you soon.